Hello and welcome to module number 1 of Social Insights. This is a 101 level course in the 360 series here at the Social School. My name is Jamie Love and I'm the Director of Marketing, and I'm so excited to dive into the numbers behind social media and why they're important and why you should be paying attention to them. So let's dive into module number 1, which is all about measuring what matters. There are so many numbers and analytics available to us when it comes to our specific social media platforms. So it can be hard to know what numbers we should be paying attention to. What are the vanity metrics versus the meteor engagement metrics? And is one better to pay attention to than the other? Well, I'm here to tell you that yes, you should be paying attention to those meteor engagement stats as opposed to those vanity metrics, such as the likes and the comments. The comments are a little bit different because it is showing you a form of engagement, but the likes and the number of followers you have are certainly more of those vanity metrics that we talk about. And while it could be good to know, how many likes a post is getting, how many followers you have overall, are more concerned about the type of engagement we're getting from the followers that we do have. So let's dive in to measuring what matters on each of the different platforms that most of us have some sort of presence on. Now, before we get into those platforms, I want to give you a lay of the land here and help you understand that paying attention to our analytics and our insights on at least a monthly basis can really help us answer some major questions. And those major questions are the basics. And we really need to know this so that we know what content is performing well, what content our audience is engaging with, so that we can start doing more of what's working and, of course, less of what isn't. So by looking at our analytics, we can figure out who is interacting with our content. And this is really valuable because we might think we have an idea of who our ideal target audience is. But if a completely different audience is engaging with our content, that's telling us that maybe we have to tweak that ideal customer persona just a little bit. They can also tell us what form that interaction is taking. Of course, if it's the like, if it's a comment, if it's a share, and certain types of interaction, of course, are more valuable than others, like we just mentioned. Where that interaction takes place and also where it leads them can be found by looking at our analytics. If we have Pixel installed, Facebook Pixel, LinkedIn Pixel, this is a piece of code that you can get from those social media platforms and install it onto your website. And many of us are able to do this ourselves. If not, our web team is very easily able to do this. We can then track what that user did once they left social media and got to our website. So we can literally find out where that interaction is taking place from the specific part of our social media platform, whether it's the feed, whether it's from an event on Facebook, maybe it's from a story on Instagram, and so on. We can also find out, of course, when that actual interaction took place. What time of day, what day of the week. And then this is telling us when our audience is most engaged. So we want to make sure that we're posting and engaging with them when they are online and they are engaging back with us. Now, the last big question is the why. Now, all of those other questions can help lead you to understand this why, but ultimately, the why is up to you. You then need to turn to your own insights, look at the numbers, decipher the numbers, but then you need to decide, why did some content perform better than others? Are there any themes? Are there any commonalities between them, between your highest performing posts and maybe your lowest performing posts? And this why is going to help you then evolve your strategy and make changes accordingly so that you can continue doing more of what's working. And then, of course, either tweak or maybe even scrap altogether the content that isn't working so well. So let's dive into our Facebook analytics. What metrics should we be paying attention to? Because there are so many available when it comes to Facebook's built-in analytics section. It is one of the best analytics sections out there on social media platforms. So stats that I like paying attention to on a monthly basis are these 5. Reach and impressions are big because this is telling you about your brand awareness. How many people are you reaching with a specific piece of content? Now, there's an important distinction between these two metrics. Your reach is the number of unique people that have seen a piece of content, whereas your impressions are the total number of eyeballs on that same piece of content. So therefore, your impressions are always going to be higher than your reach. So for example, as you know, when you're scrolling Instagram, for example, you might see a post 5 times over the course of a given week. So if that's the case, you would be counted as one person reached, one unique person, but it would count as 5 impressions. So that's something to keep in mind. Impressions are always going to be a little bit higher than your reach. Then, of course, your engagement. And I grouped this into one overall metric, okay? But your engagement could be any form of likes, but those are more of those vanity metrics, so don't get too hung up on those. But comments, right? Any direct messages that you got as a result of something, and so on and so forth. Link clicks, of course. This is a form of engagement, but I broke it out specifically because this is a really valuable form of engagement. This means that somebody liked your content enough to want to be taken to wherever it is that you called them to go, that call to action. 9 times out of 10, that's our website. So how many link clicks did a post garner? We definitely want to pay attention to this. And when we see a high number of link clicks, you know that that caption was written in a way that really called your audience to take that action. It incited them to take that action. And then last but not least is shares, another really valuable form of engagement. I call shares the biggest form of social flattery because a like and even a comment is relatively easy to do. There's not a lot of barriers. But if I like a piece of content so much that I want to share it with my friends and my followers, my family, then you know that that content has really resonated with that person. So pay attention to the posts that get a high number of shares and see what you can do to create more of that type of content. Okay, our Instagram insights. Now, way less robust than our Facebook analytics for sure, but they're constantly changing this interface. And there's a lot of good information that we can garner from looking at our Instagram insights. So a few things that I like to pay attention to. Now, the first one here, content balance, that's not something that your insights is actually going to tell you. This is something that I've made up. Now, I want you to keep in mind those content pillars and categories that we've talked about in previous labs. This means thinking about those pillars, those overarching themes that our content falls within. We know that we want to have a nice variation of content, different content categories coming to life, whether it's a testimonial, a quote, a how-to, maybe it's a tip or how a tip guide, something like that. We want that nice variation of categories as well as pillars. Now, take a moment to kind of give a bit of an inventory of your monthly content. How many pillars did you get under each of those categories? And pay attention to this. If you know that you want an equal distribution among your pillars, and all of a sudden one of your pillars is taking up 60% of your post, then you know that you need to tweak your strategy a little bit. Or maybe go back to the planning phase and make sure that you're planning accordingly so that all of the pillars are represented and you have a really good variation of those categories coming to life. Now, comments. Comments is a big one on Instagram because it's such a community focused platform. We want to make sure that we're paying more attention to our comments than our likes. And likes are easy to get and they're fun to see grow. I get it. I absolutely do. But we want to try and drive valuable conversation on this platform so that we can really build and nurture our communities. So pay more attention to the number of comments your posts are getting rather than those likes. Our reach rate is another really great one that we can pay attention to. How many people are we reaching? What is the rate of that? And it will tell you that right within your insights. Impressions, of course, the reach and impressions, remember the distinction between them. They hold true for Instagram as well. And then tap forwards and tap backs, that's for your stories. So those two story metrics are really important because this is going to tell you if people found your story engaging enough that they wanted to tap back and view it a second time, or if they're just tapping forward, we know we've all done it, they're just fast forwarding through your stories. So maybe those stories aren't holding their attention quite as well. So pay attention to those two story metrics. So when it comes to Twitter, there's a few different areas that you should be paying attention to as well. These 4 are the top ones that I like to pay attention to every month. The engagement rate, the percentage of people that are engaging with your tweets. And it will tell you this right in your insight section. You don't even have to calculate anything to get that rate. Your retweets, of course, this is like that share on Facebook. So that's that biggest form of flattery. Mentions, people are mentioning you in their tweets, okay? So this is another really valuable form of engagement. And then of course, just like Facebook, are link clicks. How many people are actually clicking the URL when you include it in a tweet? Okay, LinkedIn is a little bit different because they have some really different stats. And so we want to pay attention to a few different things. Now, the first two have to do with our visitor demographics. And there's a lot of really valuable information when it comes to our visitor demographics within LinkedIn Analytics. I like to pay attention to top job function as well as seniority, because this is really giving me a lot of information about the who is interacting with our content, their top job function. So in Social School's case, this might say marketing. So I know that there are the majority of people engaging with our content are marketers, as opposed to potentially small business owners or entrepreneurs. Seniority is another really great one. This one was surprising to me for Social School. It was actually entry level. Okay, so this is telling me that higher level or mid manager level is not necessarily engaging as much with our content than those entry level positions. So then I can start to gear certain content towards those entry level professionals. Now pay attention to a few different spikes here, and you'll see two of them on this list. So a spike in page views. This means that whatever you posted that day it really resonated with your audience, and it created a big spike in the amount of people that then went to view your page. So pay attention to what content was posted on the days that you see these big increases. Shares, of course, again, that biggest form of social flattery still holds true for LinkedIn. CTRs, clicks per impression. So kind of like that the link click that we're looking at on Facebook as well as on Twitter. We want to see how many clicks we're getting per impression. And then another spike to pay attention to is that follower growth. Again, pay attention to what type of content you are posting on the days when you see a big increase in your followers. Now, last but not least, I did want to mention email statistics to pay attention to, because even though it's not necessarily a platform on social media, it's still a really valuable marketing tactic. And these are some of my favorite metrics to follow when it comes to those email newsletters that we might be sending out on a monthly or even a weekly basis. So three of them, of course, the open rate. How many people are actually opening the emails that you send? So out of your total distribution list, let's say you have 1,000 people on your list. If 500 of them are opening it, you have a 50% open rate. So pay attention to this and make sure that this is always increasing and not necessarily decreasing month by month. I also want you to pay attention to when you see a spike in this open rate. When you have a higher than average open rate, what was your subject line? What day and time did you send it out on? The subject line will go a long way in enticing people to open an email or not. Then, of course, your click-through rate. So of the total number of people that opened your email, what percentage of them then clicked on one of the links in there? So again, we want this to be as high as possible. It's always going to be, of course, smaller than your open rate percentage, but pay attention again for higher than average click-through rates. And you can often see, depending on your email provider, what links are actually clicking within an email. So pay attention to which links are getting clicked. What was your call to action? How did you call them to make that decision and to take that action? We want to use more of that language if we can. And then last but not least, your unsubscribe rate. Now, this is sort of the negative stat when it comes to email marketing, but I want you to make sure that you're paying attention to it and make sure that it just remains constant. You're always going to have a handful of people unsubscribe from your list each email that you send. That's normal. And I wouldn't get hung up on that. But if you see a big spike, you have a higher than average unsubscribe rate, again, pay attention to the content that was in that email. Was it too controversial? Did it maybe alienate some people within your audience? So we want to make sure that we're not alienating anybody. So pay attention to any higher than average unsubscribe rates and then react accordingly or adjust your strategy accordingly. Okay, so those are the metrics that really matter and what we should be paying attention to on each of the platforms. We're going to dive into the two big platforms, Facebook and Instagram, and get an even deeper understanding of our analytics within each platform and understanding them. First up is Facebook in module number 2, so I will see you back here shortly.